Hi guys, so today I actually have a set of videos for you. So I've been requested a few times to actually do a real-time version of my process, and I did that today. I actually have a separate video where I do have this same image and the same process, only stretched out to real time. So if you're curious as far as like how fast I actually sketch or how I do my inking at a little more realistic way of viewing it, or if you're curious on what tools I'm using or any specific process, you can go in there, check it out, and see it in a much more easy to see and clearer way. But yeah, it is actually about 45 minutes long, and that's about how long it usually takes me to do a piece of this complexity. And but yeah, so this video is a much shorter version. It's the same thing, like I said, only in a much more easy to watch way. So yeah, you can still watch the same process here. And since these videos are a little bit more about my technique and my process, I'll talk more about what I'm actually doing in this. But yeah, so my sketching, I usually start off with the layer that I drop the opacity down to like 30 to 40%. And I much prefer sketching on a lighter opacity layer. When I'm working on it, it just feels a lot more like it's something for me to build up on, and it feels more like it's working. Whereas if I have the opacity set up too high so that it's too dark, I don't know, it kind of gets more distracting, and when I look at it, it doesn't feel like something that I'm working on in progress. It just looks bad. So I prefer to work on it at a lighter opacity and then build up on it. But yeah, so I'll usually get the roughs in for the basic form and the shape that I want, and then I will add another layer on top of that. And I usually set the second layer to about 40 to 50%. So it is darker than the one below it, but it's still pretty light, and I still like that. It still has like a building up effect. So it's more like those two layers are working together to create the sketch. And yeah, I'll usually go in and refine the areas that I kind of glossed over in the first layer. So usually it's like the face and the hands where I'll get it basically there, and then I'll come back in with this so that I can really get it refined and show it the way that I want it to. But I won't go back over areas that I already got the line right. So like if I've gotten the basic arm shape correctly, I'm not gonna redraw something that's just gonna be the same. So after I'm done sketching, I'll either usually take the sketching layers and stick them in a folder together, or I'll combine them, but I'll go back in and I will drop the opacity for the sketch layer down to no more than 20%, usually less than 15%. That way when I'm inking on top of it, it's the line work that I see much more so that what I'm looking at is much closer to the finished version of the line work rather than seeing the sketch coming through and looking like it's building up on the lines. When I take it away, the line work would be weak without it. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned when I was doing inking that really helps me is to do quick brush strokes. So just like when you're inking traditionally, you want to be able to get something really smooth and graceful and quick, and you'll move from your elbow and you'll do a nice arcing motion. And then if I didn't get like quite the right curve that I wanted, luckily since it's digitally, I can step back and I can redraw that however many times I need to. And usually I end up drawing it quite a few times depending on how long the shape is, or yeah, how precise I need that actual arc to be. But yeah. And then after the inking, I will take layers below the ink level layer, and then I will add in the flats. So that's just where I block in the colors, and I'll put different shapes that are not connected on the same layer. That way I can have as few layers as possible. This one I think I had 3 different color layers, and yeah, that way I'm able to lock the visible pixels, the ones that I drew on, and that way I can go in and really quickly brush over it and change the colors if I want to, so that I can tweak the color palette much faster and easier that way. And then I go in with the shading first and then the highlights after. So for the shading, I will create a layer on top of all the colors, and I'll usually take a pretty saturated purple for the shadows, and then I'll usually change the layer to multiply, but I experiment a lot with the different blending modes for that layer because I like to have different effects, and different pieces sometimes want to have different effects. So yeah, but usually it's multiply. Multiply is my go-to for my shadow layer, but I'll drop the opacity anywhere from like 30 to 60 depending on how harsh I want the shadow to be. And then after the shadows, I will go in and I add sometimes multiple layers on top of that for the highlights. Usually I set them to overlay or soft light depending on the look I want. This one I actually only ended up doing one layer, and I used like a yellowy orange color for the highlight. And I think the finishing up steps for this one is actually my favorite part for this piece, but I went in and I added texture only on top of where he was, so not on the background at all. And I really like that effect. I think it looks really cool and it helps complete him as a finished piece. And then I went in and I added this white border around him, and I really like that and how it makes him pop, but it also gives the piece a little bit more room to breathe. And yeah, I mean, I really like that. And that is pretty much it for this piece. I actually really loved it. I think it helped me get back to like the roots of my style and what I like about it, because I think I've been kind of floating away from that, trying to experiment more with it, which I still love, but I think I'm kind of forgetting some of the things that I love about my own style and that I want to keep. So this was a good piece. It was definitely a good refresher as far as how I like to draw and how I like to create. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you can catch my future art videos. And until then, I'll see you in my next one. Bye!